Hey, do you teach yoga? Have you ever trained to lead yoga classes, to be a yoga therapist? Have you ever owned a yoga studio? Maybe even just wondered what it was like for the women and men up there in front of the room on their mats, leading you through endless Surya Namaskars, down dogs, and pranayamas galore? Well, these are their stories, and mine. I'm Rebecca Sebastian, a 20-year yoga teacher, 10-year yoga therapist, yoga studio owner, and co-founder of a yoga-focused nonprofit. I've done a lot in the yoga world over the last 20 years. Pretty much everything except had a water cooler. You know, a place to share stories, talk about struggles, successes, and find other people who do the same thing that I do. Welcome to Working in Yoga, a podcast and substitute water cooler for yoga folks to connect and build community, to share our unique profession, our challenges, and our journeys with the world.
Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. This week I have my longtime friend Ransom Noble on the podcast. Now, Ransom is a human of many hats: engineer, yoga teacher, and science fiction writer. All of these things coalesce into one of, honestly, the most interesting humans that I know. Ransom is now the new title holder of the person whom I know the most in real life, who is also a guest on the podcast. And honestly, it's funny to have people whom you know well come on and talk about things that we both like. This episode actually highlights a lot more of my own teaching techniques from the days when I was teaching a whole lot, which was something expected for me in this conversation. I usually am not centering my own teaching on this podcast, in large part because I feel like it's more useful to give you all something to think about versus something to mimic. So this is new and slightly uncomfortable for me to have some of my own teaching highlighted. Thank goodness it was with Ransom, a kind and compassionate human if there ever was one. This got me thinking more about how lucky I've been in my life to collect creative humans around me. Like, I love talking about the creative process and have for ages. And I simply adore all of the messages that you all have been sending me about your creative process as a yoga professional. So I want to say thanks for all of those short notes and chats and social media DMs and voice notes. And speaking of voice notes, if you want to leave me a voice note, check out my links for a link to my SpeakPipe, and you can record and tell me how you've been creative in your own yoga work recently. And if your creativity extends to photography, I have a new way for you to connect. As I prep to send all of my articles and assets to the designer to work on the launch of my new magazine, Inside Yoga, I wanted to create a photographic archive of our work for the magazine. So one of my core principles behind both this podcast and my new projects is that I want to give people something to be really proud of about our work. So if you have photos of your studio or classes, people featured with permission, of course, your prep for your work, your digital setup, or your before or after class shots, please submit them for our documentary archive of our work in yoga. Each issue, I will pick photos to feature, and since it's a digital magazine, I can link out directly to your sites or social feeds or studio pages. So head to the show notes to get that link as well. Okay, friends, now let's drop into a conversation on creativity with my good friend, Ransom Noble. Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. Okay, so this week on the podcast, I have a guest who now has the official award for being the person who has known me the longest and the best, and I have spent the most time with in their presence in real life. Like, this person knows my shit, y'all. Welcome to the podcast, Ransom Noble. Ransom, my friend, will you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Oh, what I do is sometimes a lot. Right now, I work at the days at the post office and I repair machines that help deliver mail. My moonlight escapades include teaching yoga, almost exclusively online these days, and I write novels, sometimes short stories. I just had one published and it has a little bit of AI and a little bit of my real job in it, and it's a lot of fun. So,
Yes. Okay, so for those of if you're new, if you don't know what series I'm in the middle of for the podcast, I'm unpacking the intersection of yoga and yoga teaching and yoga professionalism and creativity. And I have invited like all my favorite creatives to come onto the podcast, frankly, and talk about this what I'm learning is an incredibly wide conversation. There's so many different like threads to pull on the thought of creativity. And so Ransom and I today are going to pull on the thread of what we bring of ourselves into the creative process. And I think a writer, especially somebody who has written as prolifically as you have, Ransom, like will have a lot to say on that. So let's talk about writing and your process and you bringing you into the equation.
Oh, it's only been several novels. I got to edit a few more. But, they never seem finished, and that's something I'm working on. But I know a lot of people look at writers and they like, oh, it's your first novel. This one's all about you. It's like, and I've written enough to tell you now they are all about me and not about me at the same time.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm currently prepping a novel, and you write character profiles and you figure out who all these great people are, and sometimes it's a bit of me where it's something I've interacted with a person and that feeling is something I go on, and sometimes it's the words that somebody said, and sometimes it's just things that I want to say out loud. And it doesn't matter if it's the main character or the villain speaking or somebody who's a total minor character. They're all pieces and they all fit together, but they're all me and not me at the same time. Because if I don't know it, I can't write it.
Yeah. Like I think that yoga teaching is a lot like that too. Like we do bring ourselves to the equation and it's very creative. Do you see an intersection there between those two things?
Absolutely. I,
Perfect. Say more.
yes, and there was this moment you could talk about of putting your notebook away, where
Yeah.
you're following this script that it might be part of it's in your head, but you have these notes. And then there's a moment where you let go of that. Well, sometimes you lose the notebook, and that's the only reason you really let go. And then people are like, oh, I love you so much more without the notebook. And then you're like, but I like my safety net because that makes sure I don't do the same thing time after time because that's just what I feel. But sometimes it's like, okay, I am feeling this. We are not doing any warriors today. And the first time I did that, my class looked at me like, we're not? I'm like, no, we're going to have a class. There won't be a single warrior pose, and we're going to do it this way. And they were just used to me having a very active, almost a little bit warrior centered in some of the standing poses kind of class. And then I changed it all up and we did it different. And they were like, oh, yeah, that was all right. They were looking forward to when I did that again. Where sometimes you just have to throw all the notes away and feel your way through it. It is a creative process, it's what you're bringing of yourself. And sometimes it's just, okay, I feel like I want to do this post today, or I want to talk about this story that happened in my life today. And it's all going to weave together. I'll get there, but it may not be scripted. It's not practiced necessarily because you're like, no, this just happened on my way here and we got to talk about it. And then that's how it goes. And that is a creative process because you're kind of making it up as you go. But it's not necessarily one where you don't follow ingrained paths too. Because sometimes when you're just following, you're like, oh, yeah, I did that and this worked. And so stretching outside of that sometimes takes a note or two, like, nope, I'm going to do this and keep that in the front of my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that you've brought up that is important and interesting to talk about is this idea that up until this point, when I've talked with people creatively, there's a lot of talk about the responding to the people in the room, which is, a very creative way to teach, but also not freaking realistic all the time. Like sometimes you walk into a group of people or you're, hitting record on Zoom, however you're teaching, and you're like, I just can't today. So everybody's on the floor. And that is building something for them while also knowing that there's a little bit of you in that moment of like, this is how I showed up today as a teacher. And I don't know, I feel like there's tension in that idea. Like, I've heard so many people come to me and almost apologize for saying, I was just so tired today. So we were on the floor the whole time. And I think that there's a creativity to answering the call of what you need as the teacher as well.
But sometimes that energy that you bring can change over class from the energy the class brings.
Yeah.
And that's kind of this melding of what's going on. And it's hard to explain why that changes it, but if you're responding to that, they can respond as well to you. Like you may have this whole class on the floor. That doesn't mean that person in the middle doesn't get the challenge they need by just pushing themselves a little bit in that different way. So we
Yeah.
can still get what we want and what we need from this, but it doesn't look like just hitting an AI yoga teacher and saying, play this. Well, what are they really doing? Are they just
Yeah.
copying what they've read? Are they just saying, oh, I found this sequencing thing and this is what we're doing? What if they're not adapting to the energy that I'm bringing? And that's important.
Ooh, let's talk about that AI yoga teacher for a second. I mean, because like you referenced at the beginning, you write sci-fi, right? So the AI conversation is, I know for a fact, since you were texting me about it, like not unfamiliar to you. But this idea that some of our own creativity is what is going to make us competitive against an AI yoga teacher. Um, so say more about that.
Okay, if I'm putting play on something AI and I just say, hey, make me a yoga sequence, I'm whatever. I'm a pretend I'm a 60-year-old male and I would like more flexibility.
Yeah.
It'll sequence something for me.
Yeah.
It will take me through it. But what if I have a moment in the middle where I have that, we talk about things come up in yoga. So I'm
Yeah.
doing yoga and something comes up. No one's there to react to you. No one's there to talk to you because you're alone. You don't have that. But if you did it in a class, that teacher would be like, oh, maybe we should change this for your feeling. And I'm going to talk about the whole room, not just this one guy or whoever's on my online class and not just one person. But I'm noticing how the people are changing. And I'm like, oh, hey, so in my older adults class, I'm supposed to check on them 3 times during class and just ask how they're doing. And so if we've hit a lot of where we've decided our ceiling is, oh, maybe it's time for me to bring that down. Or if we haven't gotten far enough, it's time to bring it up.
Yeah.
Times where we get through the standing sequence because we do a standing and then a seated, and we're like barely warm. So I'm like, oh, we're going to ramp it up on the seated one. And nobody usually expects that you're ramping up the difficulty in the seated portion of the class, but we
Yeah.
do it. So then we do hit our goals. An AI can't do that. They're
No.
not going to be checking in with, and how are you feeling right now? I feel like that pose is one I never want to do again. You can tell the AI, oh, I never want to see your child's pose again, just to bring one out there. But they're
Yeah.
going to be like, okay, we never do child's pose again. Not, we have fit you to the child's pose so that now something makes sense and now it doesn't hurt. Now we can work through what came up. We can change it. That's one of my favorite parts about yoga is I can change it to fit the person, not that I'm going to change to look like a magazine picture. That's
Yeah.
one of the favorite things that I get to do. It is creative. It is challenging. It keeps my brain focused like, oh, wait, that doesn't look comfortable for you. Can we try something a little different? And they're like, oh, wait, yeah, let's try something different. And then if I say it maybe for one person, maybe 5 of them try it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we're doing something completely different just because I noticed your face was a little bit like, but you wouldn't say it out loud. And so AI can't do that. AI is going to be like, here is the pose that I see in this book. This is what the pose is. Because it doesn't have the capacity to say, well, your human body, let's change it. If you want to laugh, look at AI gymnastics. My daughter sends me these sometimes. And it's like, hips don't bend that way. You bend them like a Lego chip. Where'd that
Yeah.
extra arm come from? I don't know. But we watch them because they're hilarious. And maybe AI will fix that, but right now it's not capable. So if I
Mhm.
say, can you fix this for me? Is it going to give you a textbook definition or is it going to give you what my body needs? Because maybe my shoulder only goes so many degrees. And it's like, oh, no, 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 you have to go this far. I'm like, but it doesn't work.
This is the piece of the AI conversation when I did that series that wasn't on that series that I wish would have been brought up. So we're gonna I want to dig a little bit into this now just because I'm very excited about it. But it is that idea that we have an AI teacher, but nobody's really saying, but you're not that AI teacher isn't teaching AI students. like they're teaching real life human beings, and that response to the real life human beings is an inherently creative response based on the parameters of yoga. Like there's typically not a pool or a horse involved in yoga. Like we have parameters of how we show up and what that looks like, and we go, okay, so I'm going to respond to the human people. Like it's you're right that, as you said, the 60-year-old man who said he wanted to be flexible, but in the middle of it he's like, my knee's in so much pain, I have no idea how to do what this AI is telling me to do, so I'm going to quit because yoga's not for me. It's the same story.
It is like that. And it's also saying, oh, well, you should move this way. Well, wait, how does that help me in real life?
Yeah.
Because one way that I told for years, all of my silver sneaker students, all of them, they're supposed to be 65 and up. I would get 90 somethings. It was fun.
Yep.
But on the other hand, I'm like, what are my goals for your age? So I told them, I'm teaching you what I want to learn in this class when I'm this age. I want to be able to pick up my grandkids. I want to be able to balance better. I want to walk on uneven ground. I want to be able to get up and into and out of a chair without the struggle.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go to the bathroom by myself. I want to be able to lock my seatbelt, get
Yeah.
into a car. I was telling them my goals, and they're like, "Yeah, those are the things that we want to do." I'm like, "That's what I want."
Yeah.
And I don't know that AI is going to think about, well, gee, now I'm 70 years old, but I'm having trouble with my fingers. Is AI going to look at your hands and say, how can we make you more dexterous? How can we make you, you know, just figure out some different things? Maybe I'm going to work on facial expressions one day because that's important.
Yeah.
I mean, how do I tell AI when I don't necessarily know? I haven't thought through all of these ideas that, oh, I've noticed I've got a twinge in my shoulder. My stepdad went to a physical therapist for that. He could have also gone to a yoga therapist. He goes to a
Mhm.
massage therapist. There's these ideas that we take. Technically, today I could also go to AI, but will AI give me what I need?
Yeah. That's really a great point. I mean, we can talk about older adults because that is a sort of niche demographic that you and I both have quite an extensive amount of experience in. But almost I could see, like let's say millennials who become older adults or we're both young Gen Xers, like we become older adults. I can see us going online to an AI saying, hey, I want to do, a 10 pose yoga sequence to keep me flexible and strong in my old age. But then what happens is it builds that for you, and you still want a human to watch you do it. You still want a teacher to say, I'm doing this right, or hey, am I going to injure myself? Because the stakes become higher as you move when you're an older adult. So you want a little bit more guidance than I think those of us who are in midlife and younger really need. Like you can kind of be a little bit more cavalier with your body when you're younger.
And I also want someone who will give permission if you look different.
Yeah, totally. AI's never doing that.
My classes, like, hey, your feet today, you might be closer together, you might be farther apart. It might be, the horizontal axis or the vertical axis. It doesn't matter. Find where you're balanced today. Today's different than every other day. And I tell
Yeah.
them it helps that I was 20 or 30 years younger than a lot of them, sometimes 50. And sometimes my daughter would come to class, the little 7, 8-year-old gymnast. And I'm like, don't do this at home, guys. She's trained in this.
Yeah.
But remember, because I was also coaching gymnastics, I was doing some of these other things. I'm like, you can look at them and even they have bad balance days. They just look different than your days where you struggle with balance. But everybody has these. Forgive yourself for having a day that's not perfect.
Yeah, and I do think that our ability as professionals to adapt to the humans in the room is inherently creative. That is a creative process. Like it's all the same kind of like mindset of I'm gonna have to take this one thing. I forget who told me the story. It was either Jeevan Hayman or a gal named Jennifer Parker who was saying that they showed up to a class and the whole class was in on ventilators and they didn't know that was going to be the case. And so they had come with this like whole like idea of what was going to happen in this class and they knew it was in a hospital, right? So they knew that people were going to have to adjust and adapt. But
But
I
ventilate
just
that's a new level
yeah,
of, well, okay, we need to rethink this.
yeah, and then I'm now like 90% sure I think that was Jivana. But like this whole that process of adaptation is a creative one. There absolutely is creative work. Do you find the same thing? Like, is there an adaptability in your writing too? That like the skill set, like you get good at the skill set of adapting in one that helps you get good at the skill set of adapting in another?
Yes. Sometimes we, like in different writers groups and different, we try to do sprints. We try to do, and I'll explain it in a second. We try to do prompts. So some of them with a prompt, it'll be a little contest. You don't really get anything from it, but it's fun. And sometimes you're like, hey, I won.
Mhm.
But write 1,000 words and they'll give you, 4 words, or they'll give you a sentence to write about that you have to put in there verbatim. Sometimes that can be really hard.
Yeah.
Wait, how do you want me to use this sentence? I'm like, that doesn't make sense in what my mind is today. But some days you're like, I'm going to write this anyway. And it's a process of just figuring out what fits. And so if I give you just 4 random words, I'm going to say you're going to use the word symphony. You're going to use the word ice cream. You're going to use the word sentimental. And you're going to use the word drum set. And you
Symphony.
write a 1,000
Yeah.
word story or less.
Yeah.
And you will put these elements in there and we'll see what you come up with. Now, a sprint is different where we're like, okay, we know what we're writing. A lot of times we would do it during November as a novel writing month. NaNoWriMo is no more, which is a good thing. It was not a good organization. However, we're all still writing in November anyway. We're just call it something different. And city to city, it's changing, but some of us are trying to campaign for an international novel writing month. Not with
Oh,
any
cool.
organization, just the whole like, we're writing anyway. We just don't want these clowns to organize us and say stupid things.
That sounds like yoga too.
It does. Nano came out and they said that it was okay to use AI to write. And we're like, no, no, it isn't. This is our creative pursuit. What I want AI for is to wash my dishes and my laundry and to clean my house. I don't want AI to take my creative pursuits. My
Yeah.
creative pursuits are noveling. My creative pursuits are yoga. My creative pursuits are, painting. I don't want AI to do any of this stuff. I want to do that. It's fun. And
Yeah.
it makes me feel alive.
Yeah. That's a really first of all, your description of, I have to write 1,000 words with like symphony drum set and the other two
Yeah.
words. Like I have looked at yoga teaching very much in the same way. Like I'll come and be like, okay, so I want to think about this thing, whatever that thing might be. And that's my parameters today is that however the hell that comes out in an asana pranayam, meditation sort of style, that's how it's going to come out. But here's my box that I'm going to work within today. That's
And I know
very
you do that because I've been in your classes where we're like, hey, today we're going to stand on rocks. And we're like, okay, we're going to stand on rocks today. Like, this is fun, but what the heck are we doing, Rebecca? And then you're like, we're going to roll up your mat today and we're going to do your warrior pose. But sometimes
oh yeah.
your heel is going to be on that mat instead of on the floor. And we're like, okay, Rebecca, we're here for it. But that's just what we expect because you don't look at the same pose in the same way. And that is one of your strengths.
Yeah.
It's one
Oh
thing
my
that
God.
takes me back to class all the time. I'm like, sign me up. Rebecca's teaching. Don't know what I'm doing. Don't care.
I still like sometimes when I like think about those things, like especially when I was deeply in like playing with in those both of those examples, I was deep into playing with like the joints of the foot. Like I spent like I know you know like a year and a half just obsessed with how the foot works. Um, I sometimes look back though and I'm like, it is a miracle I had students. It is a miracle that people came to see
It's
me.
not a miracle because we kept showing up and we're like, what's Rebecca obsessed with this week? Because we were learning about it too. And we're like, okay, I am minorly obsessed with feet. I remember I came to you one day. I'm like, I heard this thing about toes. And we were
What?
toes to see if we could move one at a time or if you knew which toe I was touching because we're yoga teachers and we're so connected to our feet,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. But I know a lot of people who really are anti feet. And we're like,
Yeah.
but we stand and walk on these things all day. How can you be anti feet?
Yeah.
But we are anti feet. A lot of people are anti feet, but
It's true.
they're important.
Yeah. That's really funny. I mean, because I do actually, it's so lovely to like for me to be thinking back to those days when I was teaching, because really, I don't think at that time, you know, which I think would have been like what, 2015, 16, 17-ish,
Yeah,
probably around that time, like mid-teens.
it was in
Um,
mid-teen.
I think at that time I wouldn't have considered this job creative. Even though I was obviously showing up with my, you know, like remember when I showed up with all the library books?
Yeah, we had
Like
to
I
push the floor and try to lift them. And we're like, oh, what is this?
called library books. So just for you all listeners, if you want this idea, like libraries will sell their hardcover books for like 25 cents. And I wanted something that weighed less than a hand weight, but more than a foam block to give like resistance and like just have some awareness of how your arms and shoulders are moving. Yeah, so I showed up with classes with like this stack of like the weirdest library books. Trashy romance novels, mystery spy thrillers, they were all involved. A book about chocolate was in there. And at that time, oh, go ahead.
How we knew to show up. We're like, we're showing up and we know we're going to have this experience and we know we don't know what it's going to be before we get there. That was part of the appeal.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I
glad.
got to show up. I didn't have to think about it, but I knew I'd be doing something creative during class.
Yeah.
And there was a day when you said we could do an inversion, anything you want. And I did 2 cartwheels in class. You only saw one. You were like, you can cartwheel. And then you're like, no, you can't cartwheel. And I'm like, but Rebecca, you said I could.
It's true. We were on a cement floor too. That floor was so hard. And I'm like, God, if she slips, they're gonna, oh no,
But the whole point was I had a cartwheel in me
you
because
did.
my daughter, when she was about 5, she started getting really into cartwheeling, and so did some of her friends. And so the parents, our parent posse, we were like, we can't let them show us up. We have to cartwheel too. And so that was us bringing back our cartwheels. And you were a couple of years after that. I'm like, no, I know I have a cartwheel, and my cartwheel is good. And by 2020, when I started teaching, coaching gymnastics, I would get on the floor with the girls. I would do splits. I would do cartwheels. I could do a few things. They would actually compliment my cartwheels. My cartwheels are good enough for the gymnasts. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's pretty good for me, being 40 something and hanging out with these teen gymnasts. And I'm like, I got cartwheels. I don't
Yeah.
know it, but I got cartwheels.
So, okay, let me ask you this then, because I actually think this is my favorite thing about conversations is I don't know where they're going to go and I get really excited where they end up. So I'm here in that experience again. If this idea of our jobs being creative jobs, and then from the student experience, like it's fun to let the students in on the creative process. Like from because you can speak then and that, yeah, I mean, yes, I'll say I was a pretty creative teacher, you know, back in the day when I was working 15 classes a week and such, um like letting our students in on that creative process. Like how did you feel as a student and how do you feel doing that as both a teacher and an author?
Ooh, okay. As a student, I like to show up to places where I'm not going to be regimented.
Yeah.
So there was another teacher that we both know way back when that was very, I would think of her more as a drill sergeant of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
You had to have your feet where she wanted them. You had to put your hands where she wanted them. You didn't have the ability to say, you know what, my shoulder doesn't feel that. I'm just going to put this arm down today.
Yeah.
And so I didn't always want to do those classes because I didn't have the option of feeling where I was and changing it.
Yeah.
But in your class, and there were others that I would love to go to because I was allowed to be myself. So as a student, when I show up and I'm getting creative, okay, you said to put my foot here. I actually put my foot somewhere else because it felt better on my hip or my knee or something. And maybe I'm moving a little bit just to find that spot. But I've also been encouraged by my teachers to maybe move around and find that spot, to maybe say, maybe my arms want to be in cactus rather than all the way above my head, reaching as high as they are, because today my neck isn't feeling it. Or today, like that back bend, that's the only back bend I'm doing. I'm going to do something else for these other poses because I'm just not there. Some teachers, I know I can do that with.
Yeah.
Some teachers, when they say, hey, do an inversion, and I'm feeling a cartwheel, I can do a cartwheel. I can still land a cartwheel. I'm doing all right. But some of them, I'm like, I just want legs up the wall today. I don't necessarily want to do a headstand or a handstand or whatever these other things are. I'm really just feeling legs up the wall. And that's enough.
Yeah.
I want the ability to choose in some of these classes, especially when, I am a yoga teacher. I know what I'm doing, but my body says today, not that. I
Yeah.
want to have that flexibility. And I do when I was in your class. You never commented other than saying, don't do a cartwheel on a concrete floor because you didn't know my history with cartwheels, which I understood. But we were
I
still
stand by it.
we still laugh in the back because we're like, I know I have this cartwheel. Nobody else is going to do that, but I got this. I'm like, she didn't catch the first one. I better do another one. That's the conversation we had in the back. So, but that's just part of showing up as a creative student when she's like, you can do whatever you want. I'm like, she said cartwheel. I got the cartwheel.
Yeah.
But she only said it one time, so I only did it that one day. But I still felt free to do it. And I did feel free to choose to do a handstand on the wall or to do legs up the wall or to even just curl up in a fetus pose with my legs to my chest. I felt free to do that where I didn't in every class.
Yeah.
That changed me as a teacher too, then that, hey, maybe it's okay to offer options saying, hey, you know what? Maybe you don't feel like child's pose today. Maybe you feel like a down dog. Maybe you feel like you just need to lay on your tummy. It's allowed. That you have agency in this practice as well. As a writer, you have to give your characters agency. They have to be, at least the main character, they have to be able to plot their own course. They can't just be shoved there by events. That's not really a good book when it's like, oh, by the way, I needed everybody to end up here. So the wind blew and now you're here. It's not good storytelling in today's age. So I was also given a book in one of my yoga trainings. I periodically retrain, The Alchemist. And The Alchemist, it was the only
I know
one.
where you got that. Yeah.
And I told them, I was like, but the character is shoved to go everywhere. The character didn't make choices. Okay, the character pulled out a rock and said, well, this one's blue. I guess I'm going to the right. Did that give me a choice?
Yeah.
No, I gave up all of my choices for this book and it turned out okay. What does that really mean? That I'm just not supposed to make choices? That I'm not supposed to, encounter the hard stuff? Because I was taught as writing a story, the protagonist is the one who hurts the most. Okay, that's saying a lot. My protagonist, the one I want to follow through a book, means that person has to hurt.
Yeah.
That means, as a writer, we talk about all the terrible things that we are going to do to our main characters. We're going to torture them. We are going to emotionally scar them. And that makes a better book. And partly it's like, oh, we're doing all these horrible things. And then it's like, just wait till you get to chapter 4. that, I mean, it gives us a little bit of weird glee, but also we're like cheering on our villains, like, hey, let's go and do bad things because that makes people love our protagonist more. But I have to
Yeah.
get into that protagonist's life and say, what can I do to get past this? Because if your protagonist crumbles and cries, your person doesn't want to read. My reader doesn't want to say, oh, and then they had a fit on the floor. Like, that didn't help. But maybe, oh, this protagonist just saw a ghost and it's her grandmother. And what am I going to do with that? Well, I'm going to say, shut up, grandma. I have to talk to the people in real life so they don't think I'm crazy. I'll be right back. You're going to follow that story.
Okay, can I pull on this thread of choice being an inherently creative process, right? Because you're giving your protagonist choices when you're writing your sci-fi novels, but also as a teacher, you're giving your students choice, right? There is like I find that very fascinating that we're on this thread right now because again, so you and I worked at the same place. We've got very similar, at one point had trained with the same person. I know exactly who you were talking about when you said I knew the person who had the feet. I mean, we're lucky she gave me a job because I worked at her place and and I just came in with all my chaos. But um I think that there is I'm proud of us as an industry for evolving past that, evolving past the your feet need to be in the right place, your fingers need to be pointed in a particular direction. I mean, spoiler alert for those who are listening, if you can't tell, we both came from training and at a studio that was an Iyengar studio. Iyengar is very meticulous in the details of how their bodies are positioned in that sort of dynamic in that place. Um, but there is that choice, the ability to give the students a choice is a creative process for both you and them. Like you're co-creating something, right?
I am co-creating. I am trying to give an experience in yoga,
Yeah.
and that experience, it does physical things, it does mental things. There's a whole lot going on. But if you don't show up for class and try what I'm trying to give you, I mean, if you show up and you want to do your own thing, I know sometimes you have somebody who sits in child's pose the whole class,
We've all had that. Yeah.
but that's what that person needed. So is
Yep.
that collaboration? Well, yeah, they showed up, they were trying something, and then they listened to themselves. What's more yoga than that?
Yeah.
And so if I'm showing up to teach, I have to understand that I can do my best. I can bring them something. I can give them choices. And that actually empowers them to have a better practice because they came, they did a down dog, they did a child's pose. They decided, oh, I'm going to hit that lunge, but I'm going to skip the warriors. How is that not a personal practice?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want. That I'm trying something, you're trying something. And in the end, we both did something good.
So how do we build that in our classes, that space for, I mean, as a person who I apparently did that and I certainly wasn't doing it consciously. Like, tell me how I did it. So I'm like, how do we build an environment where you are co-creating with your students?
Don't center yourself. It's not your
Oh,
experience. You have to
nice.
step out of that center. You're saying, I am showing up for this, but I am not necessarily attached. It's not the outcome that I need. It's the outcome everyone is going to get to. So I show up, I give. The people show up, they do, but every experience is different in that class. My experience as a teacher, every student who shows up has their own experience.
Yep.
And show up for that. Show up for the idea that we're all going to be different, which seems weird when we all shared an experience. And part of that experience being different is that we all shared it,
Yeah.
which is not easy to put your mind around. So I gave a critique about one of my sci-fi writers who wrote a yoga class.
Oh,
And partly I wanted to cry having this yoga class because it was beautiful. And there were some non-humans in this class, and those non-humans showed their emotions as colors on their skin, which is such a beautiful, amazing concept. Okay.
that's
And I
terrifying.
loved it. Yeah, it is also terrifying.
That's terrifying for me. That would be.
I know, but
No,
that
thank you.
part of the point of the story was that it was
Yeah.
terrifying to be so vulnerable. And the author did an amazing job. But in this yoga class, the teacher showed up, these different beings showed up, and some were human, some were not. And they all had this experience that somewhere in the middle, the emotions all blended and they were having the same thing. And I'm like, okay, one, is this a performance or is this yoga? Because I'm not sure all of us could have the same experience, but I wanted it to be true. I wanted us all to show up from our disparate places and halfway through the class that we are melding together and that we all form this thing. And at the end, we are so peaceful that we have the color of peace on our faces.
Mm.
And I want this to be so much. But I also have to acknowledge that I know humans, when we show up, we don't all have the same experience. And that even if we get to a peaceful place, we're bringing something else that not everybody can share. But I still want it to be true. I want this whole like peace radiates through everything, because then I'm like, oh, if we get the whole world to do it, we would have world peace.
Yes. You hear that all the time in the industry. We're saying it all the time. If only everybody did yoga.
Well, I mean, but it doesn't always work that way.
No.
And so for me, my best meditations are during Tai Chi.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the whole point is I have this sequence, it's a long form. And by the time I go from beginning to end, my mind lets go for the whole thing because my body has done it for so many years. I can just run through that practice where if you make me sit still, and this is when I was teaching your mother, because we would come to class and be like, we're not going to sit still for meditation. We found ways through it because she and I could both let go of our minds with a little bit of movement.
Yeah. For the backstory, my mother who comes to yoga also hates the quiet, like the stillness part. She just can't.
Like,
she can't do that.
Still. And so we found ways of not sitting still together where we could both meditate.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, but not a lot of yoga teachers, in my experience, are going to let you not sit still.
Yeah.
Because
it's very true.
Sit still, that the stillness of the body lets the mind wander. I'm like, no, actually, the stillness of the body makes my mind go in circles like, oh, we got to cook dinner.
Yeah.
We need to get groceries on the way home. Oh, we need to do this. And I'm like, I'm so exhausted from sitting still.
Yeah. Can we talk about yoga as it's portrayed in literature, which we also didn't talk about ahead of time, but I really want to talk about this partially because I did just read a trashy romance novel where the female main character was a yoga teacher. And when I tell you, it's called Wild Card, by the way, by Elsie Silver, y'all, if you want to listen to it. When I tell you, I was terrified. We have a yoga teacher main character who falls in love with an aerial firefighter of all things. Of course that would be what it is. And actually, I will tell you, the yoga teacher character, I was so pleased with how she was written. I was so pleased with how yoga was portrayed. Yes, she was still a white Westerner in Canada who's teaching yoga and all those things, but I have to say there were no notes, and I am hypercritical about how yoga is portrayed everywhere. And I really was so pleased with the outcome of how she portrayed this main character and her understanding of our jobs and our struggles and our challenges. What do you see? And you referenced this book where there was a yoga class in a sci-fi book. Where else have you seen yoga in fiction?
Oh, I don't see a whole lot of yoga in fiction.
Yeah.
I don't, which is sad. I mean, and maybe good because I don't want to hear the good vibes only crowd running around saying,
yeah.
Frightened. We went to Costco and we bought the tote bags. Like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But I would like to see some of it. I know sometimes the pieces that I do find where they're really memorable, they're describing an experience and they may not actually describe the physical objects, but it's just the reaction. There was one about this piece of art. They never described the piece of art. They talked about how they felt, of all the different reactions to this art. And I still remember that story because it was kind of amazing. I don't remember the name of it, of course. But a lot of times we don't put a lot of physical modalities in writing. And I find it interesting. A different writer friend of mine, we write every Monday night together because that's just what
Mhm.
we do.
Yeah.
She has now gotten into hockey. And she's gotten into hockey because she was writing a character who played hockey. And now she has a favorite team, which is hilarious because we're like, where did this hockey thing come from? She's like, well, I had a player, so I had to learn about hockey. And now we're like, okay, that is definitely how it happens with writers
Yeah.
because we creatively thought, oh, this would be great. But then we had to learn all about it. So I wrote a story about mermaids, and they were not just like,
Where is this going? Did you meet a mermaid?
no, but I researched all of the people who dress as mermaids and swim as mermaids who are actual people. There are mermaid shows out there.
What?
There are
Really?
mermaid shows. So these, usually women,
Yeah.
will have to do, they'll have to audition. You kind of swim out of a hole. There are breathing tubes so you can get air while you're 20 feet below water. They will lip sync music for this mermaid show. There's this whole mermaid culture out there. No, people don't know about this. So I've got a cousin who lives in Montana. I took the kids. We went to see my cousin in Montana and we went to a mermaid bar. It was a bar. They were having a brunch, but it's a mermaid brunch. So there was a tank behind the bar. And we actually got to sit up at the bar because we didn't have a reservation. So somehow we were like up close and personal with the mermaid. And the mermaid in the tank, she would go up for air. She had a Starbucks cup that she would drink upside down that had air in it. And she was dressed as a mermaid and she would interact with the people. And that's what she did during the mermaid brunch. This was a whole thing. People pay extra to go to the mermaid brunch so you can have time with a mermaid. Oh my gosh, how is this not science fiction? No, this is fact. People do this. I have done this. And there are whole people who buy tickets to shows to go see the mermaids swim and sing and do these things. This is a real thing that people do. They swim like mermaids. I know it sounds crazy. So I researched all the mermaids. I talked about the pretty hands because my two main characters, they were twins. They wanted to be mermaids in these shows. So I learned all about these mermaids. And now I've even taken my kids to see the mermaids with my cousin's kids. And those kids were over the moon about meeting the mermaid, even though it's through glass. We have pictures. Like,
So I feel like when you experience those things like mermaid shows, for example, in real life, and then you pull that into fiction, you're then looking to recreate somewhat of the real experience that you experienced in fiction, which I'm assuming would be the same way for yoga, right?
it's
Like,
the same way that I'm pulling this experience and I'm bringing something about this experience with me. Whether it's to writing, where I'm talking about mermaids who are swimming in the water or Lake Michigan or wherever we are, we're
yeah.
swimming, or I'm talking about how somebody cut me off in traffic and I am trying to find a peaceful way through it and not just scream at the top of my lungs that they are, insert whatever words you find appropriate or not appropriate. And very, very seldom do we look at that other car and go, they're probably having a bad day too.
Yeah. That process is the same, I think, in our teaching because we are having experiences outside that then sort of, and I'll just speak for myself, right? Like, I know for sure I've had experiences outside the teaching space that I have then pulled into using that in some sort of creative way within our classes in an appropriate way too, because I do think there is like that weird stereotype we have of like, somebody sits in the front of class. I actually just posted one of those reels where it was like the teacher was like, I bought limited Trader Joe's bags the other day. And like you go in and you're just like, you have a yoga teacher who's got some random ass story and you're going, how does this? I just want to like do child's pose. Like, let's go. But we
Yeah,
do kind of like real life inspires how we teach and what we teach and how we're presenting the world to our students. Like that relationship is similar in a yoga class and a novel, I would think.
it is. And sometimes I would get students in some of my older adult classes. They were trying to do exercise science or something, and they would come
Yeah.
and watch some of the classes. And I had one guy, he goes, I see what you're doing. You put us in this pose and it was uncomfortable. And then you tell a story. So we're not thinking about our legs until you switch it. And I'm like, yep, you got me. That's what I'm doing. I am giving you a different part of the experience to think about, like how I got cut off in traffic. I'm going to use that cut off in traffic again.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I was on this way and I was going to be late and I was worried about it, which is not a yoga thing, right? You're supposed to be all calm and peaceful and say, it will be fine. That's what I learned from our teacher in common. It will be fine. Well, that works to a degree. And sometimes you're like, but I'm really going to be late.
Yeah.
So you get caught off and somebody runs a red light and you're like, wait, maybe it will be fine if I just take my time and get there when I get there. And everything will go after that. So I'm 2 minutes late to class and I'm just not going to worry about it. I'll say, you can stay a little bit later. There's not a class right after mine. I'll hold you for an extra minute or so. It will work out.
Yeah.
And I tell them this, like, I am sorry I am late. I got cut off. We're going to do it this way. Because maybe we all need to just have that extra moment and give somebody grace for having a bad day too. Because it's not just me having a bad day. We could all of us be having a bad day. And sometimes I go to work and clocking in at 7 a.m. is sometimes hard because we didn't sleep enough or, it's whatever day. And so sometimes it's like, yeah, it's a little too early today. And they're like, yeah, I'm like, it can be for all of us. And just give it to everybody. Like, I wanted to go back to nap today. How about you? Like, another 2 hours would be nice. Yeah, we're just having that day. And if you apply that to everybody, they'll take it because you're giving them something extra.
And choice in their experience.
It's always a choice. Because if I don't give you a choice, you can't use your creativity either.
Yeah.
I also can't because I don't have the choice because I already wrote everything out and it is set.
Ransom Noble, tell everybody where to find you and read your mermaid story. Text me the mermaid story. I want to read it.
I will send you the mermaid story. Unfortunately, that anthology is out of print at the moment, so I'm going to look at where else I can do it. I know, it's a favorite. But you can find me as Ransom Noble on pretty much all the social media places. Not X, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram now. My kid put me on it. I'm like, oh, oops. And Blue Sky.
Nice. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was delightful. So much for this conversation, Ransom. Here are our key takeaways. First, so it's funny. Okay, I responded to a person's post on Instagram that talked about students who were going rogue in classes and how they were in the wrong. And what he meant by going rogue was that they were off doing their own thing and not what the teacher sequenced. And I actually commented and I said, I have had this happen to me dozens of times throughout my years of teaching. And I believe that it's our job as teachers to hold the attention and space for our students. And that sometimes our students are coming just for co-regulation instead of for following the teacher's sequence. And that co-regulation is a perfectly valid reason to come to class. Now, I was surprised how many people agreed with my take, and it got me thinking about the skill of responding to your students in classes, like what Ransom and I talk about in the podcast. That ability to shift based on what you're seeing in the room, in real life, or virtually is absolutely a creative skill. Next, Ransom is the first person on this podcast to talk about the very real truth that our creativity will be a useful response to the rise of AI in our industry. As I've said in the past, there absolutely are, right now, today, AI yoga teachers, but all of the tracked biometrics and pre-planned sequences cannot compete with the act of co-creating classes with your students in the moment. This co-creation is a super skill that we need to highlight more as teachers. Next, it is really fun to let the students in on the creative process. Okay, so I remember when I was purposely cultivating my ability to be creative as a teacher, that I let my students in on a lot of what I was thinking about behind the scenes. I was thinking things like, can I help people be embodied in their feet if I have them stand on smooth river rocks? Can we get some more interesting biofeedback in our shoulders if I use something heavier than a block but lighter than a weight? Or how can I highlight the difference between discomfort and suffering using asana? And how can I do that in a way that doesn't like mentally or emotionally scar people? Now, that last one is probably my most talked about series of yoga classes that I have ever taught in my 20-year career. And with each of those, I got to offer a creative approach on a topic and then let my students in on that process. Now, we got to have fun, and it added novelty and storytelling to classes in a new way. Next, speaking of, have we thought about yoga teaching in the context of storytelling? Okay, so years ago, I heard some dude, and I wish I remembered his name because I would credit him, but this guy suggested that we teach yoga classes as serials, where we weave storytelling into each class, and over the course of, say, 4 weeks, we have a continuous story going on during our teaching. Now, for a while, I got really into playing with this idea, but honestly, for me, I struggled to work it into being responsive to my students in class. But it strikes me that that would be a really amazing way to teach an online yoga class series. So if you love that idea, run with it. And finally, how yoga is portrayed in culture matters. I am constantly, and I do mean constantly, on the lookout for people and portrayals of yoga in the common culture space, be it an Aflac commercial or a stand-up routine or a smutty romance novel, because how we're seen by the general public is also how we need to redirect our marketing to combat some of the more egregious conversations happening around yoga in the public sphere. Okay, so next week I have Per Arez on the podcast, and Per and I talk about all things jazz, creativity, theater, and yoga. It's such a really delightful conversation. I cannot wait for you to listen. Until then, I wanted to let you know that I am so proud and grateful that you're here with me. Let's go get back to work, and I'll catch you around the water cooler next time.